What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Triple H podcast, the episode of the off season. Dunny and Jake back at it, ready to break it down. A spicy off season thus far. The Warriors are the champs once again, and back to a crazy NBA off season. This feels right, Jake, doesn't it?
Definition of feels right might be a little different, but yeah, no, I'm excited. We've already got some drama today, which of course we should have known as we were putting this together last night. Like, of course something was going to happen today, and we've had like 3 crazy things happen today already. So I'm excited. It's going to be a wild free agency ride. There's a lot of like maybe the high end players aren't going to be as dramatic as some other years past, but I feel like there's a lot of good mid tier players and interesting restricted free agents that are not going to be with their teams next year, one way or the other. At least a couple of them. So there's a lot to talk about, a lot to get into free agency wise. So yeah, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, and yeah, I'm in agreement with that because I feel like we've already seen a few key rotational guys get moved. Other few rotational guys declining player options today, and then some more that have been rumored about. And like you said, not a lot of stars who are free agents or due for big money, but then you have a guy like Jalen Brunson, who the New York Knicks are apparently contemplated giving a max contract. So maybe we don't have superstar names out there, but there's definitely guys getting significant deals and teams, seeming to build a championship roster and going after, these 3-and-D guys, locker room guys, and then just role players who are opting out of old situations. So,
Yeah.
No star names, but definitely going to shake up the NBA a bit.
So want to start with the news of the day, I guess.
Big
Like
trade.
whatever, like an hour ago, Woj broke this. DeJounte Murray traded to the Atlanta Hawks for 3 first-round picks, a pick swap, and Danilo Gallinari. So no, I mean, everybody when they were talking about this swap, I feel like earlier in the season, even when you've kind of heard Murray to the Hawks, it was always with John Collins attached. Every Hawks
Yeah.
trade that we've heard about has been John Collins attached. So instead of that, the Hawks make a move, get Murray, mortgage a lot of their future with a lot of those first round picks, but they've got their backcourt or what they think is their backcourt of the future now with DeJounte Murray and obviously Trae Young, their franchise player. How did you feel seeing this deal come across your timeline?
So initial thought, my bias kicked in, and I was a little bummed that the Celtics didn't get DeJounte Murray, if I'm being honest. But as far as breaking down the actual trade, I don't know. I think I'm a little higher on it than you are. I think me and a friend were talking about this the other day. Like, I saw that the Celtics would have to give up 3 first rounders for DeJounte, or at least that was like a made up deal. And I was like, ooh, I always hate like the, crazy amount of first rounders. But in a Celtics situation, in a Hawks situation, they have super young rosters, and more notably, their star players are, the young guys. You're thinking of Trae Young here, DeAndre Hunter, who's really coming to his own, John Collins, if they keep him around, that is. But they have the young core. They really shouldn't need the draft pick, especially, if they're getting a guy like DeJounte Murray in return. And then as far as them, so, I didn't mind the trade as much as on paper it kind of looks a little weird. But then just thinking about Murray and Trae Young playing with each other, I don't know how it's going to look offensively, but I honestly think Murray is going to take off so much pressure on Trae Young defensively. I don't think as many teams are going to look to attack Trae Young because they can put Murray on their primary ball handler, and kind of rattle the other team's offense a little bit. And then DeJounte Murray is a really, really good and underrated playmaker. And Trae Young can play a little more off ball, which he's never really been able to do. I honestly think DeJounte Murray is easily the most talented guy that
Oh yeah.
Trae Young's ever played with. So I think it's going to be super interesting. I think DeJounte Murray's defense and playmaking is going to have the biggest impact on the Hawks for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely the most talented player he's been with, which is huge. Like you can't understate that. Dude was an all-star last year. He's on Team USA. Like this guy has been around the block. It's going to be an incredible backcourt pairing offensively. I'm not as high on it defensively. He's only 6'4". I'm just worried about they don't really have any wings to go. I mean, I guess they're hoping that guys kind of develop a little bit. You got DeAndre Hunter there, who's just been battling the injury bug. They've got Okongwu there who can kind of solve a lot of problems at his best case scenario. I'm just worried about, I'm imagining this roster against the Warriors or against your Celtics in the playoff series, and just those guards just having a hell of a day guarding any of those other, or Luka, like a guy like that would giving them trouble. That's my only worry. But I think this team's ceiling now and their floor is significantly improved by having a guy like Murray alongside Trey. And like you said, offensively, like what it's going to be able to do to take the pressure off of Trey, like the ball handling responsibilities. Like Trae Young better be watching. I mean, I'm sure he should be watching it all summer anyways, but Steph Curry off the ball tape all summer, because Murray can Trey can basically be a shooting guard for this team if they really wanted him to. And I don't think that you should want him to, because he's an incredible passer, but there are going to be situations where that's going to be the best way to go about it. And now they finally have a guy next to him that can really handle the rock. So for me, it's more just defensively what that's going to look like. And also still the little bit of the unknown of what Trae Young looks like without, a 900 usage rate in the NBA, because he's really like, I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I'll look it up here, but he's had to have had absurd usage rates the last couple of years. So that'll be interesting to see what he looks like without that.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much all of that. And I think that's important, what you first brought up about, just because they have DeJounte Murray now alongside Trae Young, I don't think anyone should think that this makes them or puts them in that contender conversation, because it definitely doesn't. I also think that they need to either bring back Collins or get a significant player or like third piece to even come close to the contender conversation. I'm also wondering, do they trade a guy like Clint Capella now, get a little younger for this young core, but also maybe make a move in the right direction where you also get better and younger. Yeah. So in those respects, I think they have a ways to go before we see them in that light. But I agree, ceiling definitely improved, floor for sure improved. I think this year with this roster, they could be an improved playoff team. But yeah, I think time will tell. And I would guess that they're not done this offseason, but who knows?
Me neither. So this year, Trey was fourth in usage in the NBA, 34.4%, only behind Luka, Joel Embiid, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm trying to look last season. Oh yeah, StatMuse right away. He was fifth behind Luka, Steph Curry, Brad Beal, and Donovan Mitchell, 32.9. So those rates are going to drop immensely. And so just wondering what his stats look like really when it comes to that, because he was obviously had a great year statistically last year, 28 points per game, 9 assists, but those you would have to expect everything's going to drop a little bit across the board, but it might be better overall for the entire team. DeJounte Murray is on the bottom of this list. I'm not going to try to count this out quick, but he had 27.3% usage last year as well. So another high usage player. Obviously they both basically ran everything for their team. So interesting development there in Atlanta. What other news we got here too? I think that the two big things are the two guards we've been talking about leading into this free agency for like the last 3 years. Brad Beal declining his option, testing free agency. The expectation is that he's going to re-sign with the Wizards for the Supermax. Do you have any other inklings, anything else you think could happen? Do you want him as a Boston Celtic still? Like, what is your thoughts on Brad Beal?
Yeah, so, and obviously my first option is now on the Atlanta Hawks, but I did think DeJounte Murray was the perfect fit for us. Of course, if we could do it without giving up our best four players being the Jays, Rob, and Marcus Smart. Of course, that's how I wanted it to go. Otherwise, I wouldn't want Murray at all. But, yeah, Beal, I would still enjoy having on the Boston Celtics. I think we would have a disgusting big three if we had Beal, Brown, and Tatum. I think we're going right back to the finals if that's the case. But I can see where it's all maybe not all that realistic. You're going to have to give Beal a bag. Jaylen Brown's going to need a hefty extension in two years' time from now. And I would rather, extend Jaylen Brown and keep him in the future than have 3-4 years of Bradley Beal, because that is the most that we could give Bradley Beal because he declined his player option. Only 4 years if he were to sign with the Celtics. So it's intriguing. It's interesting. I would obviously love it if Bradley Beal was a Boston Celtic, but I still think it's not my first choice. I think, because he even came out and said a few weeks ago, he wants a supermax. I think he wants that bag. But part of me in the offseason, looking at the offseason that the Wizards have already had, they got a little younger this morning when they shipped out guys like Ish Smith and KCP and brought in guys like Will Barton and Monte Morris. And then in the draft, obviously, I think they did the right thing by drafting Johnny Davis. I don't think that was a mistake at all or anything. But I think Beal could be looking around and being like, we have a bunch of young, talented guys. I'm on the older side. We're not contending if I stick around here. Yeah, he can get the bag, but I feel like he's also dropped comments recently about he still wants a title. Most players who play at his level do. And he's kind of flirted with other teams a little bit, I think, in some of the comments he's made. So maybe Beal takes a look around and is like, is my number 2 here is Kyle Kuzma? Is that what's going on? And that's the reality of the situation. So that's where the only reason I think Beal maybe doesn't want the money and finds a slightly cheaper situation with way better upside.
Yeah, and that's why everything seems still on the table for him. I think that even if he signs this deal, that he could get moved this year. And it's like a thing where it's just like they sign him, give him all the money he wanted to. They still have this young team. And the fact that they can sign him and then trade him, he helps them out because they're obviously going to get back more assets for him rather than just leaving the organization high and dry, because he clearly cares about the organization in some regards. Kuzma's an interesting trade candidate this offseason too. I think that your Celtics are going to be looking at Kyle Kuzma with that trade exception. I think there's going to be a number of teams that will look at Kuzma at a pretty reasonable number for a guy that can score like he can off the bench, especially title contending teams, to kind of try to fit him in there.
I think he averaged like 17, 9, and 3 last year. Not bad. The shooting splits weren't great, but
not bad. Size, he can defend. He's not like an A+ defender, but I'd say he's probably like a B+, and he's big. Obviously, he has size. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts with that Wizards team. They're not set up to win right now, unless Beal just goes superhuman again. And even then, it's like, what are you going to be, like the 7 seed, 6 seed? So we'll see. A team that wants to win, and apparently this is the reason this is happening. James Harden declining his player option, $47 million, expected to sign a 2 to 3 year deal that is more team friendly. So maybe not the full max. I'm just guessing is what that means, like 30 million, which is still, I mean, I don't know if the way we saw James Harden finish the season last year, if any kind of deal like this is going to be worth it. But for Philly, they didn't really have another choice, right?
No, I don't think they did. And honestly, I want to say something. I'm going to pull up the tweet before I say it, just so I have it right in front of me. But this tweet that Shams tweeted about James Harden is more impressive to me than maybe James Harden's MVP season. Shams tweets, Harden's sole focus, win a title in Philadelphia next season. Harden returned to his workout and on-court regimen much sooner than usual this offseason, pouring his full focus on 2022-23 and a championship run. The fact that Harden's gotten in the gym earlier, he's putting in the work earlier, and he's about to take a pay cut so the Sixers can make another move here, bring in another asset to help out him and Embiid. That's crazy. Like, this is not the James Harden we've been used to for the last 4 or 5, even 6 years. Maybe James Harden had a sweet epiphany last year in the playoffs when obviously he wasn't playing up to speed. Disappointing playoff run for the Philadelphia 76ers as a whole. And here he is in the offseason, some time on his hands, saying, I'm going to put in the work and I'll take a pay cut. Let's go out, get someone to help me and Joel and win this thing. I mean, as a basketball fan, no matter who you're, a fan of and who your team is, you have to respect that, especially for a guy like James Harden who's gotten shit for so many years about this kind of stuff. And he could have easily opted in, sailed into the sunset, and like, whatever, you guys think I suck now. I just made $40 million by signing one piece of paper.
It's going to be a very interesting. I can't wait to see the full James Harden experience for an entire year in Philly. See how it plays out, man. It's going to be something for a team that, man, like, we're still the fact that Joel Embiid is still, they haven't been able to find, the right exact perfect guy. And I guess Harden is on paper supposed to be that, but maybe Harden like 4 years ago would have been the perfect guy at this point. Like, who knows what he's going to look like? And I'm not saying that he's like done, but it just didn't look good in the situation last year. But it also could have been how miserable that whole Nets team just was in general. Obviously, it was a mess. Speaking of them, Patty Mills declines his option with the Nets, entering free agency. The Nets are still an option to re-sign. Apparently, probably would have to be at a higher number, I would assume, than his 6.1 that he signed for, his mid-level exception. I'm assuming he's not going to get much more than that mid-level, but other teams have higher mid-levels than the Nets can offer. I know the Lakers have been discussed in on him, but they still only have that minor mid-level. But this is a guy that could basically walk onto any contending team and be a huge, huge piece for them.
Yeah, I saw this news as we were hopping on, and I think it'd be silly to say that he's the number one guy that I want the Celtics to go after now, but he's up there, man.
Mm-hmm.
He has a relationship with Ime Udoka. He has a relationship with Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, all Team USA teammates. He was coached by Ime. There's that famous video of him and KD after Team USA talking some shit to Tatum and Ime. And then at the end of the Nets Celtics series as well, I think Mills would be a great fit. Someone that the Celtics desperately need to just come in and bang threes off the bench. But like you said, he could walk onto any contender and give them that push, give them that edge. I mean, Mills is a guy who we've seen people do this for years. The Kyle Korvers, the JJ Redicks, just guys on that level. The Danny Greens, just impacting championship basketball. So I don't really blame Mills for declining this. I think if you are a role player on the Nets, you probably have no idea what you're going back into next year. I don't think the Nets organization has any idea what's going to unfold this next week and then the start of next year. So if Mills wants a little bit more money and a little bit more security or chemistry on a team, I don't have a problem with that at all.
If it could be the Boston Celtics, then that is the perfect piece to come into that organization. I would have said the New York Knicks if they weren't about to give Jalen Brunson $1 billion. Like, it seems like he could do. He is not the player Jalen Brunson is anymore, but kind of serves that same role. There's a lot of different teams that could use his services. Maybe like Denver Nuggets as another guard, especially after they shipped out Will Barton and Monte Morris today, which I'm sure we'll get into later on. That was an interesting move that we saw.
I think a Memphis Grizzlies would be interesting for Patty Mills as well.
Yeah, honestly, he seems like a Heat culture guy as well. I could definitely see him down there.
I can already picture him in Miami Heat jersey. That's a good call. Yeah, I feel like Pat Riley would like stay up at night thinking about Patty Mills and the Miami Heat, dude.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the Dallas Mavericks as well. As we talked about Jalen Brunson for a second there, I feel like he'd be a nice guy to slot into that role afterwards. I mean, they have Dinwiddie as well. Those would be two former Nets guards there. So let's talk about. You want to talk about that trade quick? Denver trading Monte Morris and why is it
Ish Smith.
and Ish Smith? Yes.
Or no, sorry,
no.
Monte Morris and
Yes.
Will Barton.
And Will Barton,
Ish
there
Smith.
it is. For Ish Smith and Kentavious
KCP.
Caldwell-Pope, supposedly to make some more cap room for Jokic's extension that's going to lock in soon, and also opening up a role for Bones Highland, and obviously Jamal Murray, as he's about to come back fully healthy this year. I like it. I think that KCP gets more of a bad rap than he should. He's still a minus A defender on the wing, and that's something that both Monte Morris and Will Barton couldn't offer to that team. We saw the scoring that Bones can kind of do and kind of get to in certain spots, and I think that he'll be able to pick that up perfectly fine. Hopefully they have a healthy MPJ next year. So I kind of like the move in general. And Ish Smith, he's now at an NBA record 13th team in the league. So shout out to him, grinding and staying alive in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm more down on the trade than you are. I just, honestly, in general, I think these trades usually bother me. Of course, there is more that goes into it than just what you're reading on the paper. Like, obviously, looking at it, I would rather Will Barton and Monte Morris. I think most people would. Our dear friend Meerkat is very, very sad to see Will the Thrill go for his Denver Nuggets, and I completely understand that. I think as a fan of this team, even if it is clearing space, even if you do have a wing defender like KCP coming in, it can be a little disappointing because KCP, while he does give you that defense, I would rather have the offensive energy from Will Barton, I think. And I think Monte Morris has done a lot for this squad during the last couple of years of Jamal Murray's injuries. You mentioned Bones Highland. I do think that's why they were okay giving up a guy like Morris. But I don't know. I think the Washington Wizards win this trade for sure. But yeah, if it is just clearly a money thing for the Nuggets, then makes sense and good for them.
For sure. All right, let's get into some of the point guard drama. We haven't said his name yet. We should probably bring it up. I thought this show was gonna be like all Kyrie Irving drama earlier in the week,
it could
but
be
luckily
right
it could. Yeah, we never know. It literally could happen at any moment. So to give you the timeline over the last 2 weeks, we were gone, and Kyrie Irving in that time was going to leave the Brooklyn Nets, was going to sign with the Lakers for the mid-level exception for $6 million. Kevin Durant was going to get traded as well alongside with Kyrie, and the Nets were about to blow up. And then Kyrie sends a text to Shams, is like, no, I'm opting in. That's how the Nets organization apparently found out that Kyrie opted into his player option, was from his statement through Shams, which is kind of just telling the entire story of what is really going on with this Nets and Irving situation. There clearly are still issues that need to be solved. I don't think him opting in means that he is a Net by the end of the year, but they're going to put on a brave face for right now, and I would assume
for the fans.
Mostly, yeah, and for Kevin Durant, right? Like,
yeah,
the second, no matter how true it was, if you have that guy threatening to ask for a trade and teams preparing offers because they think Kyrie is leaving, I think the way that they're constructed, you really can't. There's no other option. Like, you have to keep this guy in any way, shape, or form. And so he opts in, which is his choice. They didn't really do anything, but we don't know if they were even offering him even this number, let alone the max that he could have gotten on an extension. So are you any more optimistic? Like, the Nets are still third. They're like 9-1 third in odds, I think, tied with behind the Celtics and Bucks, right behind the Celtics and Bucks for the NBA Finals. I just have a hard time feeling like that's the ceiling of this team this year with what we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, here's what I'll say about that. So, in no way, shape, or form is this me trying to dance on Nets fans' graves or even poke fun. But until I see Kyrie Irving on opening night in a Brooklyn Nets jersey playing, not on the sideline, then I feel like that's a safe assumption that you can't believe that he's going to play until you see that. Because I think Nets fans were very, very excited at the beginning of this offseason when I forget the exact quote, but somewhere along the lines of this, Kyrie said, I can't strand my guy number 7. Like, I'm not going anywhere, meaning he wasn't leaving Kevin Durant out to dry. That means nothing. I would feel less safe because he stood in front of a packed TD Garden in Boston and said that if you guys will have me back, I'll return next year. I mean, you just can't believe Kyrie's word at this point. And, I'm not taking anything away from his basketball abilities. When he plays, he's one of the greatest players on the court. He's one of the best players in the league. Not taking anything away from him. But I think we've learned with Kyrie Irving, you can't really take what he says for the truth until you see it. So I think him opting in was, I think Nets fans can feel a little more optimistic. And the fact that other teams came out except for the Lakers and said that there was really zero interest there, that's also something to be optimistic about. So sure, I think Nets fans can be optimistic. I would not get my hopes up just only because I've seen this before until I see him play.
Yeah. Let's get to the season. That's really all I can think with.
Right. And until we start hearing more rumors, which I'm sure we will.
Yep. What are the odds? We're about to hit the very slow times of the NBA offseason. The free agency rush is this first week and a week and a half or so. And then it's really summer league is kind of, it's a different, there's teams talking to each other there and everything. But once that's done, we're really in a slow period. How many over under the amount of Instagram lives we have with Kyrie Irving? I feel like there's at least 3 or 4 coming where he says some ridiculous shit. At least 3 or 4.
We can probably anticipate some more Twitch streams talking about OnlyFans as well.
He really does love his Twitch streams. I didn't realize he was such a gamer.
Hey, if he went to the Lakers, him and AD start a little Twitch stream together.
That's true.
Possibly.
Speaking of the Lakers, Russell Westbrook, all in the least surprising news.
Oh my God!
$47.1 million. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they made this point very well. He posted that video yesterday of him singing that new Beyonce song "Break You Free," which is basically about trying to break free of a 9-to-5 and go do what you need to do in your life. And they were saying, how does this apply to Russell Westbrook, who is opting into $47 million? He's not breaking free of anything. He's literally this has no correlation to anybody like you and I working a normal day job as we do. Russell Westbrook, but I think he's living happy. He's like, you know what, bro? Y'all could say whatever you want. Yeah. I made $47 million by doing it. He could average 21% from the field next year. He's still getting paid $47.1 million. So kudos to him. But I don't know. I don't really have any comments on this. It's just bad for the Lakers. It's always been bad news for the Lakers. Once they made this deal last year, you knew this was coming.
Yeah, I'm still a Westbrook guy. I'll always love Russell Westbrook. That doesn't mean that I won't, point out when he's playing bad, because I did that last season.
Yeah.
But if you're LeBron James, if you're the Lakers, you got to be pissed that he said he was opting into this. That he was opting into his player option. $47 million. Not only, is it going to be hard to move a guy like Westbrook now if they want to do that, because no one is going to really want to take him in on that money. 2, if he sticks around, you just have to pay Westbrook that money. And if he gives you what he gave you last year, he's only worth half of that.
Yeah.
3, you just don't have room to sign anyone else now, which was already an issue for this team. The depth is horrible on this team. The players outside of LeBron, AD, and Russ are horrible on this team, or at least played that way last year. It just really, really, really puts them in a tough spot. And where, I'm kind of in your camp where I believe that that was kind of a fluke season for the Lakers last year. I think if AD's healthy, I think if LeBron's healthy, they get it back on track regardless of the way Russell Westbrook performs. But the rest of that roster is scary, man. I mean, they're going to have a perfect season. And I mean that in the sense of injury luck, of Westbrook actually, fitting into a better role and playing alongside LeBron and AD better. I think they're going to need a lot of things to go their way in order for them to have a successful season. And this Westbrook hit, good for Brody. I'm glad he got his bag, but this Westbrook hit is putting them in a tough spot off the jump.
I have very low expectations, unfortunately, for the Russell Westbrook experience this year. A guy on the other side of LA who I'm very excited to see.
Yes.
Finally back in action. John Wall to the Clippers. He finally got his buyout from Houston. He signed with the Clippers, I think, for a $7 million deal. And now the Clippers adding John Wall to this team, hopefully returning Kawhi Leonard. They still have Reggie Jackson, as you put here. Ivica Zubac re-signed with them for 3 years, $33 million. Paul George on this roster, obviously. Luke Kennard, Marcus Morris. Like, this is a very deep team and a good team. What are your expectations for John? I mean, I don't even know what to expect because we haven't seen him on the court. But the rumors last year were that he was healthy enough to play, and Houston was kind of just like, "Nah, we want to get a top 5 pick. Like, you don't need to come here." So I'm very interested to see, like, if they thought he looked that good that they wanted to keep him away because they wanted to build this young core. Like, what is the ceiling for John Wall after such a long layoff?
I think the ceiling is, I don't think his playmaking ability went away. I think you just have to assume his athleticism has dropped a little bit. So maybe no 360 layups on the fast break or an around the back dunk on the fast break and posterizing someone. Maybe less of that, but I bet his speed's still there for the most part. Like, I would still, put money on John Wall still being one of the fastest players in the league with the basketball, because there's a difference between people who run without it and people dribbling, and he is by far one of the fastest people with the basketball. I think he'll be slightly less of a scorer, and he really doesn't need to be on this Clippers squad. They're loaded with those types of guys, and I think his playmaking won't drop. I think he can still be that 8 to 10 assists per game guy. Probably defense down a little bit too. The lateral movements after not playing for almost 4 years at this point, or at least 4 seasons. It's been a long time for John Wall. I think I was actually trying to bring it up. Throwbacks Hoops posted John Wall highlights with the fire emoji, like right when it was announced that he got bought out by the Rockets and about to go to the LA Clippers, and all the quote tweets are just like, I saw some of these highlights with Rondo on the Celtics. Like, is that a Bobcats team in these highlights? Like, and that's true. Like, he hasn't played in a long time, so Clippers fans, don't think that you're getting the John Wall that hits the Dougie. But that being said, that's true. Don't expect that Wizards John Wall though, where he was absolutely balling out of his mind. But you should still be very excited about this. I still think as far as traditional point guards go, John Wall is still a very good one to have. He has the size. He plays defense. He can run. And I have here, I really, really do believe, when healthy, that this Clippers team has the best complete roster, lineup, whatever you want to call it, in the entire NBA. I really believe that.
I think that's hard to argue, honestly. I mean, it's been that way 2 years ago when Kawhi was healthy. Like, everybody was like, damn, this Clippers team, they're just deep everywhere. And the thing I'm really bullish on when it comes to John Wall is just being with Ty Lue. Like, Ty Lue has been masterful for point guards. Like, any point guard that comes through the Clippers, like Reggie Jackson was about to get paid, like big paid, like last summer before he re-signed. Like, there are teams that were going to give him a bag. Like, there's guys that have come through and been able to excel. You look at like a Terrence Mann, who turned into such a great player, getting developed under Ty. Like, Ty Lue knows how to work with these guys and get the most out of them. J.R. Smith, how effective he was able to be with the Cavs a while back. With, like, people thought J.R. Smith was done. Like, when he first came to the Cavs, it was like, oh man, like Jordan Clarkson with the Cavs, even like a guy like that. Like, just guards that everybody was kind of like, like they're good, but what are we really getting out of them? And Ty Lue can get the most out of them. So I think that's the biggest thing I'm looking forward to, seeing what the brain of Ty Lue is able to do with John Wall. Let's go into. Oh, go ahead. You got one more?
No, I was just gonna touch on that. The obvious thing to look at is like how crazy the starting five is gonna be, and then you think about that Luke Kennard and Marcus Morris are like their 9 and 10th man, and it's like those are very, very solid players. Marcus Morris averaged 15 points per game last year, and he's probably your 10th man. So I just wanted to add that part. That's part of why I think they're the best lineup. But yeah, let's move on to another one of the rumors or moves that have been made. Where do you want to go next here, Jake?
I wanted to go to the restricted free agents because I think that those are the major free agency news. There's some extension talk we can get into, but these are the guys that could be on the move. We got to start with DeAndre Ayton. I mean, we know basically Phoenix does not really want to re-sign him at a max. He's going to enter restricted free agency. There's only like 4 or 5 teams that can really afford him. The Detroit Pistons are the team I'm most worried about. Pistons adding Jaden Ivey in the draft to their backcourt with Cade Cunningham. That feels like an incredible front court of the future. So adding a guy like Ayton into that group would just make so much sense all the sense in the world. I just don't see how Phoenix can just let him slide. Miles Bridges has taken Charlotte out of all his Instagram and Twitter handles. Feels like he's going to try to go somewhere else, but Charlotte GM did say the other day that Miles Bridges will be a Charlotte Hornet, so maybe they're prepared to match.
Yeah,
and then Colin Sexton wants north of $20 million a year. It's believed that the Cavs offered him last 3 years, $51 million, in the same structure as Clarkson got with the Utah Jazz a couple years ago. I don't know who's going to give Colin Sexton $20 million a year at this point. I thought the Knicks might be a team that would send him a lot of money, but clearly they're dialed in on Brunson, and it's at a higher price tag than that. So the Sexton thing is really interesting to me. So just, I don't know, pick any one of these guys. Like, where do you have any predictions for where they're going to go, or just doesn't it feel like all these guys should kind of just stay in their same situations where they are right now? Like maybe the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Yeah, I think I kind of want to, stick with Ayton here for a second. I think what you were saying about the Suns shouldn't be willing to give up a guy like this easily, because it kind of seems like even since like the middle of last season, they were done with DeAndre Ayton, which is wild. And you have to, think, did that come into play at some point in the playoffs? I mean, there was that game where people were saying he refused to check back in for the Suns. I think he feels disrespected from the franchise. I think he probably should think that, judging by what we hear from the Phoenix Suns. And, ESPN's Brian Windhorst said today that Suns believe they could find a number of other centers who can give them the type of production that DeAndre Ayton can.
That's wild, because the dude's he's 3 years into the league. That's the thing. Yeah. It's like, how do you know? How do you know what you have out of him yet?
Right, and that's why I want to talk about him, because I think whatever team lands DeAndre Ayton, if he in fact does leave the Suns, is, it's a crazy impact no matter where he goes. And the potential trade to the Nets that I was seeing today really doesn't make all that much sense. I don't think that will happen. I think Detroit's the most likely right now, and I think Detroit would already be a little scary if they, add to their already very, very solid young core. So I don't know. I got my eyes on Ayton. I think any team should, that has the money should be willing to give him, it may be the max. I don't know if he's worthy of it now, but at least close to it.
What do you think about the rumor that he wants to play the 4 and not the 5?
I believe that he might think that, but I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think any team's going to want to buy into that. There's not many teams out there that have a bigger, more athletic guy than DeAndre Ayton. It doesn't really make sense to play him at the 4. I don't know. And then you wonder if he does say stuff like that. And then the thing about him not wanting to check back into the game, like both these things are a little soft.
Well, he
If
definitely wanted to just get extended last summer. I think
yeah,
he thought, we went to the finals. I had one of the biggest plays in franchise history. I was a main reason that we made it to the finals. I was a
right.
main reason that, we played any kind of defense on Giannis, even though it didn't work out too great. Like he would like without him, they would have been lost last year. And then when they didn't do it, and then you go into the season, and it's an owner who notoriously doesn't pay guys like that. It had to have been a toll on him, just mentally, just wondering what was going to happen and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know though. Like if your feet, I don't see how he can think he's a 4. That's for sure. And that worries me because it makes me feel like he just doesn't want to basically be the paint presence that he actually is and be the defense rebounding guy, because those guys don't get paid. I mean, that's what he's looking at right now. Like they put him in that role and we're like, yeah, but we can find other guys that do that, like you just said. And so I think he's worried about that a little bit, but I don't know, man. Like it is, like I said, the grass ain't always greener. And like, yes, you could go to Detroit and do whatever, but that's a team that is building and rebuilding. So maybe it's better because it's on his timeline and everything else. But you're the star.
Better on his,
like,
yeah, I was gonna say better on his timeline, but you're gonna be expected way more if you go to a place like Detroit, and you're not gonna have a guy like Chris Paul throwing you the ball.
No, and I love Cade. I mean, he's amazing, but he's not Chris Paul. He's not Chris Paul, and there's going to be a lot of growing pains with that backcourt there too. So I don't know. Miles Bridges is another case. I just don't know who's giving him the money either. Like I really don't. And he wants a max, and I wouldn't
giving him the max.
He's like in the weirdest spot that you can be in. I feel like for all these guys, because he is a guy that you should want to keep, but he's gonna get. He's gonna ask for a max. He's a guy that can score 25 points a game, and he's 6'9" and can jump out of the gym and everything. Like those guys get max contracts. That's just what it is. But is he a guy that can be the number 1 or 2 guy on a playoff contending team? I don't think
hasn't
so.
showed it yet.
No, and that's another team that another Detroit target where I wonder if they strike out on Ayton. He's from Flint, Michigan, from the area. He actually put a wrap up one of his raps the other day. I think he said something about like if Charlotte does it. I don't know if it was real or not, but I thought that I heard it. Something about if Charlotte doesn't take me, I'll be a Piston or something like that. So grew up a Pistons fan, whatever. That makes a lot of the Pistons are the biggest free agency players, mostly just because they have money and look like they want to like try to do something with these young guys. Because OKC doesn't really want to do anything. Maybe the Spurs. The Spurs are another potential 8 spot that I feel like make a lot of sense. Especially they just cleared up a bunch of cap space, obviously getting rid of Murray and everything else.
David Robinson 2.0.
Yeah, something like that. Bridges maybe to, I don't know, like Dallas, something like that as well. But it's just the restricted free agency. Like you basically have to give him a max. Otherwise, if it's something below the max, Charlotte really should match it. It's just a really tough spot because it's the guy that you should match and should want to keep, but then you're going to sign the deal and it's instantly going to be a bad deal.
Yeah, man, I don't know. And I feel bad, and I feel like, and mostly it's Hornets fans, but like I feel like we and other people who talk about this stuff put themselves in a bad spot when they say, "Oh, I don't think Miles Bridges deserves the max." He doesn't. He does not deserve the max right now. Like you said, could he be a number 1 or a number 2 on a playoff team? Nothing he has done so far in his career proves that that's the case. Could it happen? Absolutely. He's still super young. He has the talent. We just talked about it. He can shoot the outside ball. He dunks on literally everyone to the point where the Hornets broadcaster just screams his head off all game. And it's just really crazy to me that people get upset when you say stuff like that. And I think it is mostly Hornets fans. They're like, oh, we want to bring in Miles Bridges. We should give him the max. And if I was a fan of that team, I would probably think the same thing. But it's not crazy to say that Miles Bridges does not deserve the max. And I think he's probably the biggest wild card in all of this because, like you said, some team is maybe going to be forced to give it to him if the Hornets don't bring him back, which I really don't think the Hornets will.
Yeah, I don't think they want to either. It's going to be so that's going to be interesting to see. And then Colin Sexton, the most interesting thing to watch with the Cavs is how much money they leave for LeBron James next year potentially. I mean, I'm not even joking. Like Wendy brought it up as a joke, but then they gave Sexton the qualifying offer. They haven't talked any bit to Karis LeVert. We haven't heard anything about other free agents. They picked Ochai Agbaji in the draft, which that's another guard to add to your backcourt that would basically be doing what Sexton would be doing, you would think. So I don't know, but I just don't know who's giving him $25 million a year either. It's
coming
just a
off
weird
an injury too.
Coming off an injury. Like I said, the Nets would have made a lot of sense, but Brunson is basically, we haven't mentioned Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson is basically locked into 4 years, $110 million with the Nets. I don't know how you feel about it. It's a Knicks. Yeah, sorry. Wrong New York Tire Fire. I like it. I like it from the sense that they don't have a guy like him on their team, and maybe it's going to make life easier for like an RJ Barrett. He's not going to have to ball handle. Like Derrick Rose and Emmanuel Quickly were just running all their offense last year. Brunson is worlds better than those guys, but 110 million is a lot. But
crazy, bro.
They have all these assets now and guys with big contracts that they can move. Like imagine, in January they just decide to move, I don't know, Randall or Brunson and all their picks for Brad Beal or something like that. Like they're kind of in position with all these guys to do so. But I don't think that's going to happen with Brunson. He's Leon Rose, their GM. He is his godson and was his first client at CAA. So this is all it's all some kind of just like nepotism chicanery that's going on with the Knicks, and who knows how it's going to play out. But that's just $27.5 million per year for Jalen Brunson is not the number that I was expecting to see this season. That is for sure.
Yeah, same thing. Like I just don't get the appeal of paying a guy like this that much money. Like there's three big things that I would be scared. There's three big things of why I would be scared to give Brunson that much money or even close to that much money. First, and it's glaring, is he's not going to be playing with Luka Doncic anymore. You know how easy it is to play alongside a guy like Luka? Like a guy who gets triple teamed every time up the court. Of course Brunson's going to get some open looks. Of course he's going to have these games where he goes off. And again, I'm not taking anything away from Brunson's abilities. He's a hell of a scorer, and he had some big moments in a couple of playoff series and one game in particular where Luka didn't play, which that game is impressive. That game is impressive. He scored his head off. He did it without Luka on the floor. And so that game in particular kind of wipes out my first argument. But what I just said right there, he showed us for a couple playoff series. Let's not act like Jalen Brunson has been like this since he's been in the league. He just hasn't. He came on super strong last year and came on even stronger in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Good for him. They didn't, it's not like the Mavericks made it to the finals. They made it close. They did really good. They had a fine playoff run. Jalen Brunson isn't a number one, and I feel like the Knicks are trying to pay him like that. And then my third thing is it kind of plays off number one. Who is he playing alongside of in New York? They've already come out and said that they want to trade Julius Randle. RJ Barrett, fine talent. I like RJ a lot. But I just don't think he's going to have the same success playing alongside these guys in New York City. Not to mention, he's going to get a ton of heat from the Knicks fans if he doesn't perform, and if he doesn't perform quickly. I think the Knicks are just putting themselves and Brunson in a bad spot if they do this. And I want to be proven wrong on this, but I am pretty sternly against the New York Knicks doing this, and I'm a Celtics fan. So, what does that say?
I could not agree more. It's just it's a classic Knicks move. It really is.
Yeah, it is.
It's a classic
it's like
Knicks
what they
move.
did in the draft.
It's a classic
Shot themselves
move.
in the foot.
Yeah, and I understand it a little bit from some optimistic Knicks fans that I've seen and everything. Like I see kind of the basketball sense it makes, but even best case scenario, Like it really all hinges on RJ Barrett just turning into a super duper star, which is still possible. I think. I mean, dude's averaged 20 points his whole career. Showed a lot of improvement last year as a playmaker. He's improved basically every summer something on his game. Like he had a terrible shot his first year, got better at that over the last couple. So it really depends on his development and everything else. But yeah, I'm not big on paying Brunson 110 million. That is for sure. I'm still not big on Julius Randle. I think he finessed for his contract and then returned back to form. I think that's their biggest problem more than anything. Like Brunson and Barrett could be pretty good together, I think. But Randle is just the biggest question mark in my mind. Like I know what I'm going to get from Jalen Brunson. I know what his limitations are, but you know that there's going to be some games in MSG where he's going off for like 38 points or something. Everybody's like, oh my God, like this guy is the best. It's going to be all over Sports Center, first take the next day. Like, is Jalen Brunson a top 10 point guard? Like, we're going to have one of those moments this season for sure. It's not true, but it's going to happen.
I just thought of this right now when you said big games in MSG. Dude, the first Trae Young Jalen Brunson matchup in MSG is going to be electric.
That sounds like ESPN opener, second night of the season. Like put us in the Garden and let's see it. All right, so the last thing we got here, we were going to spend more time on the draft, but 5 things broke during this afternoon when we were planning this show. So just what was your biggest takeaway from the draft? We'll go with that to end the show here.
Biggest takeaway, dude. I think, and it's hopefully you have something different because we touched on it a little bit, but the Pistons' new young core is crazy.
I'm terrified, bro.
Crazy. The fact that I saw a TikTok of Pistons fans live streaming the NBA draft, and when the Kings didn't take Jaden Ivey. And they scooped up Jaden Ivey to go alongside Cade Cunningham, to go alongside Sadiq Bey, and now they might land DeAndre Ayton. Like just the fact that the Pistons got Jaden Ivey is mind-boggling to me. And I think him and Cade are going to be nasty together. I really do. I was a huge Jaden Ivey fan this year in college ball, and yeah, I really like that. I also just kind of sliver this in. I think Johnny Davis to the Wizards is awesome, and I think he fell. I really did think Johnny Davis was going to go above 10.
Yeah, and Johnny Davis is a bucket, bro. Like he's gonna put up 16 points per game this year. I think easy.
Yeah, I mean,
like
he averaged just under 20 and 8 in college last year.
Yeah, I love that move. I am terrified of the Pistons. Get it? I hate the Kings more than anything for picking Keegan Murray, and I like Keegan Murray.
He's good.
I understand.
Doesn't make sense.
I understand. Like, oh, we got 2 guards. Whatever. Like, I don't care. Like, Jaden Ivey could be an All NBA talent. Like we've heard all year. This is a 4-person draft, and that 4th person was not Keegan Murray. It was Jaden Ivey, and was clearly the best guard in this draft. And just like.
If you wanted someone like Keegan Murray, you shouldn't have traded away Tyrese Halliburton.
They're just a mess. The Kings, you can never expect the Kings. Like, I fully expected the Kings to do that and ruin my night by Ivy falling to the Pistons. And the Pistons got all this credit afterwards, like A+ draft grades and everything else. Like, bro, you didn't do anything. Like, they got
Kings
lucky.
just got naff.
They got lucky. Yeah, exactly. But Ivy. Anybody fits perfectly next to Cade Cunningham because Cade can do basically anything. So he's just gonna help Ivy be able to, assimilate much easier than anything else. So that move is I'm terrified of the Pistons young core. I hate the Pistons more than any basketball team. So the Cavs Pistons games are gonna be very interesting this year, no matter what happens this summer. I wasn't happy about that. Paolo going number 1. I think Paolo is the best player out of those top 3, out of Chet and out of Jabari Smith. So it really wasn't a surprise to me. I think Woj screwed with everybody. I think that was all just ESPN. Like, Woj, just send out a tweet saying send out a tweet that it's all done, and then right when you get on the pre-show, actually give them the information, because it was literally right away. Woj was like, yeah, well, now Paulo is in the discussion. It's like, okay, bro, like, no, it's not now. It's not 20 minutes. You didn't find this out 6 minutes ago.
Yeah.
You've literally just been waiting to launch it on this show so everybody would tune in and see what happens. So great TV, but Woj is like, Woj is just straight ESPN show now. That's my NBA draft recap. That moment when he tweeted that out that it was solidified, and then right as the show started, was like, actually, it's not that solidified. I was like, okay, bro, like, what are we talking about here?
How about Stephen A. just roasting the New York Knicks the whole NBA draft?
Oh my God, Stephen A. He was ruthless, man. He really was, but they deserve it. I understand. Stephen A. Always great, always fantastic. I love that he was doing like the interviews and everything too. Like, it was just so weird to see him in that. Like, I know that he can do them, but still just so weird to see him in that setting. Chet Holmgren going to OKC, number 2. Who knows with Chet? I mean, there's so much unknowns around him. I think OKC is the perfect place to go, but you mentioned SGA not being on their timeline. Yeah, he isn't really. Like, they've got a million young guys on this team. I was wondering if they were a potential Durant spot for if Kyrie was going to get traded. Like, just
I
get
would
him
love
back
that
home.
so much, dude.
Russ,
I would literally
there
cry
too.
bro.
Just bring Russ and Durant back to OKC and just bring the band back together with some of the young guy with SGA and whatever else. But I do like the young pieces they have. I still think I like the Magic's more, and that has to do a lot with Paolo is going to be able to step in and just do what he does, because that team's pretty much set around him. Like, Franz Wagner kind of holds down that playmaking forward that they need. They have great guard play, obviously.
It's crazy that they just have Jalen Suggs in the back pocket too.
Yeah, Jalen Suggs and Paolo Banchero are going to be incredible together. Like, I'm very excited about that duo.
Wendell Carter Jr. Like, I'm super excited for this Magic team. I definitely think they have a better young core than the Thunder, and I just want to get this out there because I want to say it before the season. I've been saying it to some friends. This is another thing, like, kind of like the Jalen Brunson thing. I hope I'm wrong. And I think Chet's a fantastic player. I think he was in college. I am not nearly as high on Chet as everyone else is. Like, I don't understand why we're already, saying Chet is this. Like, I feel like everyone's believing Chet when he says that he's the best player in the NBA. He's not. I like the confidence. I think it makes for good content. I think it makes good for building his personal brand, and I applaud him for that. But I think there's so many things in Chet's games that can get exposed in the NBA when he plays a strong big, when he plays a strong team defense. He puts the ball too low so many times. And that's the thing that we saw Robert Williams, who's one of the more respected bigs in the game now. He got exposed all NBA finals as soon as he brought the ball down low. And it sounds like I'm preaching to like an elementary school team here. But, I mean, there's things in basketball that still matter from that level to the NBA, and that's one of them. I think Chet's going to be great, and where this could backfire on me is that OKC is quite literally the perfect place for him to land, because he can almost make this his team in a way. Obviously, SGA is there, but outside of that, there's not really many other guys that will compete for touches and for, set plays and the offense to be run by them and just usage in general. So Chet, I think, has a great situation. He could easily make the most of it, but I think people need to temper their expectations a little bit about Chet Holmgren.
Agreed. Fully agreed with that. So that's pretty much the draft. That's the top of the draft. As a Cavs fan, super excited about Ochai Agbaji. That was my number one target.
Solid, man.
Love him. I think he probably slipped because he's a 4-year guy more than anything else. And he's going to be a great shooter. He's got great potential as a defense. Like, he's literally going to replace Isaac Okoro, and that's essentially what that's
great.
Be. And that's more than okay with me. And potentially Colin Sexton, depending on what happens in the summer. So is this actual breaking news, or is this dude just messing with us here in the YouTube?
Oh yeah, he's messing with us. That's been there for a little bit.
Okay, Trent, what are you doing here? That would be the dumbest trade I've ever heard.
I know.
I would rather have Siakam than not Ayton at any point. Why would you trade 2 first-round picks? Yeah. What are we doing here? Come on, Trent. Make up a better trade if you're going to try to trade.
I know. He did do me for a second. Not because I read the trade, but I just saw the breaking news and I was trying to make a point, and then I was like reading back and forth. But yeah, no, not true. DeAndre Ayton still remains a free agent
For now.
as of right now. Yeah.
For now. All right. That'll do it for our show today. Follow us at Happy Hour Hoops. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. For Donovan Holden, this is Jake Micah. Enjoy your summer. Enjoy free agency. And we'll be back next week with a little bit of a recap. Enjoy your 4th of July weekend as well. Enjoy the holiday weekend. Hopefully you have some good time with friends and family.
Stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated. Enjoy the summer. We're in the dark days, so hopefully you're catching up on some shows, some Stranger Things, some The Boys, whatever shows you to watch. Get there. Basketball season will be back before you know it. Peace, y'all.
Later, guys.